Yeah, and that's why it's so important to, jump on that as soon as you can. But as far as I think they might have the reasoning behind firing Dubas wasn't quite where I would like it to be, but the options of, I mean, the option I think the only way that they do go is hire Brad Treliving as the next GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And from a Maple Leafs perspective, I think that's a great idea. He's one to swing for the fences, and especially at this pivotal point within this organization, the franchise needs to. It's win now mode, not too much different than Calgary is. So he'd be jumping into a very similar situation that he was in a year ago or 2 years ago when you had Johnny Gaudreau and Matthew Tkachuk on their last year of their deals, and you got to kind of make a decision, right?
Dan has joined us.
I heard you say Calgary 3 times, so I appeared.
You're better at showing up than Devin is when we say Treliving 3 times.
Yeah,
because he's been eating Boston pizza.
Yeah. Okay, I guess this is okay. So, we'll get into this a little bit later in terms of Canadian media, but this is the challenge with Brad Treliving and Craig Conroy brought it up in the press conference as well. The handling of Johnny Gaudreau and the early results of the Matthew Tkachuk trade don't put Treliving in a fantastic light. And you're in a similar situation with Austin Matthews that you are with Johnny Gaudreau. I mean, in terms of you need to make a decision here whether or not you sign him or not. Now, or I think that I would think that there's a better chance that Austin Matthews would sign more than Johnny Gaudreau would sign in Calgary. I think that's a fair. I don't. Think
a lot of it depends on coaching, because if we're talking about this, I think the biggest thing that I have with the biggest issue I have with Brad Treliving and over the past 2 years is his ability to manage up.
And he's going to need to manage up in Toronto. And he's not only going to need to manage up to 1, he needs to manage up to 3. And I understand where you're coming from, Devin, but I do feel there's some red flags with Treliving now.
So with the Gaudreau situation, it's a completely different thing. It's very similar but very different because Johnny Gaudreau, his wife now was pregnant. There's so many different differences between the two players, right? It can't just be, Brad Treliving fucked up because X, Y, or because, Johnny Gaudreau didn't sign and Austin Matthews might not sign. There were so many different things that were involved within that. We've been taught, we on this podcast, we've talked about it for years, that it takes that it's not just about the product on the ice. It's about the transition into a brand new city. What type of situation you're in, your marital status, if you're having kids. Look at Jacob Markstrom, for fuck's sakes. Once he had a kid, he was lights out. Before that, he was shit. He was dog shit. And that had nothing to do with him, his ability to stop pucks. But it seemed like there was a transition there. There was a switch that kind of happened, right? So if you're looking at it, broad spectrum, then yes, they are very similar. But there's way too much more. There's layers to it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say what Kevin said and saying, let's look at Treliving in terms of, the Gaudreau thing. I don't know what we're looking at there. Gaudreau didn't want to be here. What do you do? He's not a dog. You can't say sit, stay for 7 years, stay, good player, right? What do you do? The guy didn't want to be here. He's a free agent. He's going to leave. So, Brad couldn't do anything. Brad can't manage that. The one I think we need to look at there is the Tkachuk deal. Tkachuk wanted out, Brad did the best he could in the scenario he was given. And now we can look at that with this playoff, and maybe it's not right, but with the scenario that he was given, with the 10-team list he had, that's the one I think you judge Tree on of those two.